morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome to RCI TV on both Twitch and YouTube, and we're back for the Mini British GT Championship. Today marks round 4 of the championship, where the action continues here in Germany. The Nürburgring Nordschleife, often referred to as the Green Hell, is one of the most challenging and iconic circuits in the world. 20.8 kilometers of twisting turns through the Eifel region with elevation changes and demanding corners promise an intense and exhilarating race for our drivers. I'm John Dalton, your lead commentator for today's virtual racing action, with Callum Kerrigan alongside me, Jesse Lee bringing you all the pictures from behind the cameras, and of course not forgetting our live stewards as a big off for Benjamin Harman kicks off the broadcast tonight. Callum.
Good afternoon, John. And yeah, if we needed a picture just to show there how terrifying and how technical and difficult the Green Hell truly is, welcome everyone on YouTube and Twitch for our 1 hour race, one mandatory pit stop of 25 seconds. And John, we've spoken a lot rounds 1 to 3 about pit stop strategy, pitting at the right time for wet or dry conditions. We spoke a lot about how important qualifying is at Alton Park. Today, if I'm in the car, all I'm thinking about today is survival. Getting around this track for an hour, staying out of the barriers, and capitalising from other people's mistakes. That's what will be going through my mind. Thankfully, I'm here in the comms box, as I don't have the stress capacity for that today, but it's definitely something that's going to be on the drivers' minds throughout this race.
Yeah, it's going to certainly be a race of attrition, as you said, of course, Callum. We've already seen an off by Benjamin Heilmann as we jump on board here. I think this was Daniel Crimson in the RPMS Nissan GTR, as he kind of halfway through the lap, almost at this point. It's such a long lap here. It's around about an 8-minute 20 to an 8-minute 30, of course, depending on your pace overall. And Daniel Crimson, the second driver by the looks of it in queue. I think the 60 has gone for a full out lap, and I think the 747 also ahead has taken the shortcut. So the 60 very far ahead at this point. So everybody ahead of Crimson, we're being told, is invalid. So Daniel Crimson, the only one on a valid lap at the moment, as we come up towards the kind of Kesselchen section before, of course, we've got Bergwerk coming up the next major corner. Of course, we've got Nicky Lauda's kind of left-hand kink that's been christened after him. Of course, would have been, I believe, 70 years old this year as he goes into Bergwerk, tucking it down low. Of course, it's a banked corner. It's crucial to get a good run off this corner because it's such a long run up through the Kesselchen section. Of course, it's an uphill section as well, so some cars you might see dragging out the 5th gear a lot more than others. Some you may see into 6th gear, and Daniel Crimson is one of those in the GTR. Of course, a very short 5th gear. Again, the Mustangs we're probably going to see sitting in 5th all the way up here, of course, as they come up through Klostertal. Of course, the very quick left-hander. Dab of the brakes, flick it in, down a gear. Of course, be careful of the outside wall. Gets very close indeed, pushing the absolute limits of the Nissan GTR as they head towards, of course, the carousel. That's another corner. Very scary indeed. Got to be careful of the inside curbs here. A lot of the Nürburgring. Some you can take, some others, of course, you need to stay well clear of. And of course, the iconic section, the carousel. Drop it in to the lighter paved tarmac. Try not to slip out, and again, use the camber of the road to get yourself around. If you do end up falling out of the carousel, it can be a very long and painful corner to get back around as your rivals all swoop underneath you, as Daniel Crimson, of course, begins the final sector, essentially, as he comes through the Herak section towards Wipperman. Of course, Eschbach, Brunchen, Pflanzgarten, and the Belfast all coming up. It's a very good section on the Sector 3, Callum. Of course, every corner kind of flows before the other, so you tend to, make a mistake in one corner, and it really disrupts the flow of kind of everything else coming out.
You're absolutely right, John, and disrupting the flow is something you don't want to be having at this track. It's all about confidence, building yourself into the lap. And you say he's just entered Sector 3, but he's probably got a good 2-3 minutes left of the lap. That's just how colossally big this track is, as he's coming in sort of the famous YouTube corner section. I'm sure we've all seen many a compilation of cars crashing as they're coming into this section here. We've got Daniel Crimson, but we've got Ted Edwards following behind. I wonder if he's trying to set himself up for a bit of a draft, bit of a straight line advantage down the Dottingher, getting into that slipstream. getting his lap time, well, to greatly benefit his lap time. Of course, we've got that mammoth straight of the Dottingher, and I think that's going to play quite key when we get into the race session. I think whoever's in the lead, building those gaps. So we've got Daniel Crinson. He was on such a flying lap, and he's made a mistake there coming into that far section. Now we've got Ted Edwards right on his rear. I think they're both on invalid lap speed. Let's Ted through. So Ted's not going to get that benefit of the slipstream down the Dottingher, but as I was saying, just the benefit that straight's going to get you. Apologies, I've just been corrected. That wasn't Ted. I'm so used to seeing him in the red and black Mustang. So not sure who that is. But Daniel Crimson now going to find the slipstream benefit. Not that it's going to help, because he is on an invalid lap, and it looks like everyone on screen right now is on invalid laps, just promoting how difficult this racetrack is.
Yeah, of course, ACC's track map on the right-hand side. Anybody with a blue circle is on an invalid lap. Anybody with a grey circle is on a valid lap. And of course, those circles will change colour when we see yellow flags out, such as the 808 that has stopped on the circuit at the moment. But of course, nobody on a valid lap yet. Ibiza Racer back to the pit lane. Of course, only 5 minutes left of qualifying. So if he does want to get a lap in, he's going to have to get out through the GP section and back on to a flyer in order to try and get a time on the board. Of course, only 15 minutes here tonight, and of course I wrote in my notes that track position will of course be crucial, but there's going to be a lot of traffic management involved as of course faster drivers catch slower drivers. Some drivers may not be so accustomed of course to the Nordschleife. They may struggle with pace, may not have driven it as much as everybody else in the server, as Andy Boardman sets the first provisional time with an 8:14.872. Jesse Lee slightly misleading us with cars on valid laps. I think the timing gate is of course messing up slightly. I think the shortcut kind of throws off the timing tools that we do have here at RCI. Of course, the shortcut is technically a cut, and then I guess the start line doesn't reset our tool that we use here up in the booth. But some drivers on valid laps. Andy Boardman was the fastest on the board. Fox coming through in second. Grim Lilith in third, about 3 seconds off the pace. Ted Edwards 8 seconds down on Boardman. Galloway 13 seconds off. Stevens 23. Harvey 25 seconds nearly off the pace. But again, these margins seem quite large when you throw obviously the size of say you're 5 seconds off at Brands Hatch. It's quite a large margin at Brands Hatch, but 5 seconds at the Nürburgring, that could just be the difference between a couple of corner exits, Callum, or a few missed apexes over the nearly 21-kilometer lap that we have here today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is essentially, 5 circuits mashed into one in terms of length. So that's how you've really got to judge the gaps. And you can see it already. P1 to P5 is just an 8-second gap, just shy of an 8-second gap, and that could be just what you said earlier. Just going slightly offline through a section, and that impedes you throughout the whole of the sector. It's very interesting. But we've got a race replay during qualifying here. What's happened here? We've got the RPMS car of Matt Stevens and Andrew Harvey. A little bit of a bump there. I'm not sure if he was meant to let him through or invalid laps, but we're having a bit of a tussle during qualifying, John. I'm interested to see how the race comes up, and we've got people on valid laps line astern. That is not what you want to see at the Nordschleife, because as soon as someone makes a mistake, you haven't got a lot of time to react to that. So I think we've just seen there Daniel Crimson letting his teammate Matt Stevens through, maybe setting himself up on the GP layout for another lap. And we're now on board with Philip Brescia coming on Dunlop curb, just starting his lap out. Things I just want to call out, we've got 15-minute qualifying session here, so only time for 2 laps, not 3, as I gracefully made a mistake on earlier. And I've noticed some people, they'll go out, do their lap, instantly pit, new set of boots, and then back out for another lap. All you need is around 2 minutes in order to get round that GP circuit to start another lap. So sadly, the cars up there at the top of the screen, the 171, the 796, this is going to be their only shot to get qualifying time in.
Yeah, one-shot quality, not what you need here at the Nordschleife. Of course, so many things can go wrong in a lap. An inch of curb, too far on the inside, too much grass on the exit, or like we see here with some traffic getting involved. Of course, Ibiza Racer just ahead of Yao Manzo here in the 222 RPMS Audi, and it's going to be very awkward going up into the Schumacher S. Yao Manzo has to lift, gives Ibiza Racer the inside line and tries to set the Audi up for a pass towards the top of the GP loop, but I don't think it is on, as Ibiza Racer just about has the legs in the M4 to keep them ahead. But this was my note about traffic management. Of course, if these guys eventually get to the Hatzenbach section, of course, pull onto the Nordschleife, it's going to be a detrimental run. And Yao Manzo pulls off and abandons his lap, thinks he's already lost too much time in the GP circuit. Maybe going to try a rush pit stop exit, see if he can get around the GP loop in 50 seconds, but I don't think that one's on. So logically, Manzo should, in theory, stay in the pit lane. Andrew Harvey up towards the top of the foxhole, of course, through Adenauer Forst. Again, a section that can be quite tricky to master. The foxhole curb, of course, redesigned in 2024. It's a much bigger curb in real life. Luckily, here in ACC, we do have the 2023 version. It's a much nicer curb, much flatter. You can be very greedy on the entry, and too greedy, and it will really bite you as the car jumps off the curb, tries to land. Of course, when you brake and shift the weight off the rear axle, that's when things begin to happen. So keep your eye out in the race for that potentially happening to someone. I've done it many and many times when I'm really pushing the limits here. Checker flag comes out for qualifying, so anybody not on a valid lap currently will, of course, not be able to start one. However, we do have enough grace time, as you see in the top right-hand side. 15 minutes for drivers to finish their laps. Of course, logically, should only need about 10 minutes, even if you began your lap at the start of the countdown. So, lots of drivers yet to set laps. Carlos Calatayud, Christoph Verstappen, Jackson, Crinzen, Van Kampen, Van der Linde, Teixeira, to name a few. And currently, only 16 drivers out of the 31 in the server have a valid lap time to their name, Callum.
Yep, only 16, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have a number of cars that don't set laps here just due to the nature and the difficulty of the track. I mean, wouldn't surprise me if a few people opt for pit lane starts here, but with that clock hitting 0-0, heart rates are going to start rising. They know any mistake now could put them out of position, which is really going to set them back in the races. We're on board again for a race replay. This looks like another one with Harvey and Matt Stevens. Is this another angle? It seems like the same. Seems like a very similar incident between these two. Harvey just holding up Matt Stevens, not letting him through, but he's got every right there to hold his position as he's in the qualifying as well. But something that Matt Stevens isn't going to be too fond of, as we've got Nicole Fox losing it again. Just how difficult this track is. Any minor mistake and that's it. That's her second shot at qualifying gone. Well avoided by the two cars as she returns directly to the pits as we ride on board with Grim Lilith, keeping it on the black stuff, which with a livery like that, John, I'm not sure if that car's best suited for the black stuff. Maybe something a bit more off-road. Yeah, certainly so. I mean, of course, anybody noticing the team name in the bottom right-hand side, of course, Kaiju Racing, powered by Dirt Rally 2.0. We do have both of the Dirt Rally 2.0 livery-themed cars with us tonight. Of course, the other one being Aaron Jackson in the Seat-themed kind of Repsol livery that was around in the early 2000s. But more to the point, it is, of course, to promote our new Dirt Rally series that we are hosting. So we're going back old school. We're jumping away from EA Sports WRC. Of course, the club features section of that game not fully fledged out as much as we would like, of course, compared to Dirt Rally 2.0, the predecessor. And if you were lucky enough to tune in last week, of course, we gave you some advice on picking up the game in the Steam sale. The game has gone back to full value. It's $17.99 in England for the base game, and of course the Game of the Year edition $34.99. Of course, you could translate that back to your own currency, of course, via Google to see if it's really right for you. Game of the Year edition, of course, includes all DLC, which would set you up nicely for a season here with us at RCI. So jump on over to the Discord. You can find all of our links down below. Join the club and get involved. I do believe the rally, the first one we hosted, did end the other week. I haven't seen a post yet announcing the next one, so keep your eyes peeled on the Dirt Rally channels, and of course they will be updated as and when is necessary. Grim Lilith currently on their flying lap, of course, coming down the Dottinger Höhe at the 20-kilometer mark roughly. It's a very fast straight, of course, aids itself really well to slipstreaming, so
Again, you've got to play it a little bit tactical in the race. Do you go for the overtake in the final sector, or do you wait, of course, for the Dottinger Hers coming through Tiergarten and Hohenreich? Of course, very tricky. Got to stand on the brakes, scrub lots of speed. Grim getting very loose through the last corner and fires the Audi towards the line for their attempt at qualifying. Currently P8 for Grim Lilith across the line. It's a small improvement. It's up into P6, just ahead of Tom Shipston and, of course, Nicole Fox. Lots of drivers in the pit lane, of course, with their times. Christopher Streppen, that was a one-shot lap up into P2. Of course, Andy Boardman just behind Jan Manzo, Benjamin Harmon, Grim Lilith, Tom Shipston, Nicole Fox, and Tex Shearer, followed by Plate, to name a few. Everybody in the pit lane. So we've got Richard Whittle, Dow still out on their lap, Harvey just ahead, coming through Tiergarten and Hohenreich. A little bit too much curb there for Richard Whittle. That would have unsettled the Ferrari coming on to the brakes, and very loose coming out of the Hohenreich section back onto the GP loop towards the line. They will both go. Harvey jumps up to P18, Richard Whittle up into P11, so some small improvements there. And still, Callum, lots of cars behind, still on valid laps. This man here, Philip Bregster, to name one of them. Of course, Christopher Streppen in the pit lane. A little bit of traffic ahead. I think that's Kevin Boss in the wheelie slow Mustang. Will this hinder Bregster into the Hohenreich section? I think it will. Setting themselves up for a clean run to the line. Can they use the Mustang to punch a hole in the air? And Philip Bregster will come into the pit lane through, of course, the cut-through boards that are put out in qualifying. Those, of course, will be removed in the race. And down the lane, Bregster will come to call their day. Dow, to name one driver still on their lap, the 707. I think that's I beat a racer as well, just behind. And the 171 still out in the Eifel region somewhere as well.
Yeah, Kenneth Dow barreling down the Dottinger, hoping for some improvement onto there. I just want to have a quick moment of silence for those pit boards that were lost to Philip Bregster there. Gone but never forgotten. I've seen a lot of people struggling in this final section. Obviously, the tyres are so cold after coming down that straight line section, so navigating these final two corners. And there we get it again, a little bit of a slide of the rear from Kenneth Dow, but ensuring that you've got the tyres in all of those final two corners is so important as he climbs all the way up into P13. Wonderful, wonderful improvement there for Kenneth Dow. And now we just wait for the 707 that's crossing the line here. Will we see an improvement from him? And more importantly, the 171. Daniel Crimson leapfrogs Kenneth Dow into P13. That was on the edge there for him, as he didn't set a lap previously to that. We've also got Martin Lawrence, who hasn't set a lap, so if he makes a mistake here, he's going to be at the back of the field for this one, fighting through all these corners, navigating the carnage. So he wants to be getting a lap in here, but fighting from the back isn't something that I don't think he's too dissimilar with. Of course, he's just come off the back of a World Tour Championship victory, John.
Yeah, of course, in my notes for later on in the broadcast, but well pointed out there, Callum. Of course, Saturday just gone, the World Tour rounded up at a very soggy Imola. It was the RCI Esports Blue taking victory once again. That included this man in the lineup, Martin Lawrence. Of course, took victory from RCI Esports Yellow and Forza Italia.ple Racing after a few kind of late strategy calls, which resulted in some tyre failures. Really shuffled the grid up. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the broadcast on RCI TV. Definitely worth a watch on that one. Meanwhile, it was Dutch Sim Racing Team. They fended off Rebound Racing Juniors and Onid Esports for silver. And of course, championships decided with RCI Esports Blue taking pro from nearly on pace and Forza Italia.ple Racing. Silver, it was exactly as Imola finished. It was the Dutch Sim Racing Team from Rebound Racing Juniors and Onid Esports overall as well. So that just proves how commanding all of their seasons were. And the RCI Bentley, of course, taking a clean sweep from all rounds. Martin Lawrence to the line, right up against the pit wall for maximum reverb effect. Goes to the pole, pips Bregster and Verstappen. And that's going to be a lap to remember for Martin Lawrence. So no last to first challenge for Lawrence today. He will start on the pole, followed by Bregster and Verstappen. Three different manufacturers here at the Nordschleife. This is going to be one interesting race, but final qualifying results on your screen currently. Of course, Martin Lawrence alongside Philip Bregster on the front row. Christopher Streppen, followed by Andy Boardman. We've then got Jan Manzo and Benjamin Heilmann. Carlos Calatayud and Grim Lilith will share a row. Just behind them, Stephen Van Kampen and Tom Shipston. Nicole Fox alongside Badowski, Teixeira and Crimson in a GTR row lockout there. Kenneth Dow with Emo Plate alongside him. Richard Whittle and Richard Phillips. Battle of the Richards about halfway down the field. We then got Ted Edwards and Kevin Boss in the Mustangs. We've kind of got cars almost paired up as we go down the grid here. Ibiza Racer and Riha, of course, share a row. Foster and Galloway, Harvey and Stevens. That's going to be an interesting one, Callum. We've seen those guys come to blows already in qualifying, let alone in a race setting. And then, of course, a few drivers there at the bottom yet to set a lap or failing to set a lap because, of course, the session is over. Jackson, Vanderlinde, Byford, and Fukushio and Redford will start at the back of the field. So, alas, the first challenge on the cards for Redford. Let's see how many places he can make up in this 1 hour race. Of course, as is akin to every broadcast, we do bring you the championship results of how things currently stand in the Mini British GT Season 2. So, Christopher Streppen at the head of the championship so far with 126 points. Nipping at his heels, of course, Andy Boardman on 121, and then a slight gap back to Benjamin Heilman on 101 points. Carlos Calatayud on 96, Philip Bregster on 94.5, Tom Shipston on 90.5, and Martin Ulrich on 86. Marco Badowski on 74, Yao Manzo on 72, and Emo Plate on 68 points. So, everybody looking relatively close in their own rights, of course. Drivers kind of almost paired together in their championship fights. Meanwhile, poleman Martin Lawrence in P11 with 67 points. We've then got Nicholas Keller on 61 points, Grim Lilith on 57.5, Ted Edwards on 55.5, with Matt Stevens just behind him on 54.5 points. Stephen Van Kampen on 45 points, Mike Redford on 41, tied with Bruno Teixeira. Theobald Roskam on 40 points, just a point behind those two, and Daniel Crimson 2 points behind in P20. We then got Kenneth Dow and a bout of the Ferrari, should we say, actually. Kenneth Dow at the head of them with 32. Nicholas Galloway with 29, tied with Richard Whittle. Joshua Lation, 28.5 points, and half a point behind him, Richard Phillips in the RPMS Lamborghini. Luke Packer and Kevin Boss, a point separates those two guys in the exact same car. And of course, Les Stevenson, 2 points ahead of Mikey Turner in P29, and Aaron Jackson with in P30 with 15 points rounds out your top 30. And of course, the championship just keeps going. 49 sign-ups at the beginning of the season here. Martin Foster with 14.5 points. Ibiza Racer with 11 points. Chris van der Linde with 9. Ryan Daniels with 7. Philip Riha, of course, a late sign-up to the season, tied with Trevor Byford and tied with Jake Howling, all on 4 points apiece. Marco Fukushio on 2. Andrew Harvey on 1. Connor Matheson on 0, yet to score. However, still signed in to the championship alongside John Aracer and Nicole Fox. Neil Pimlock, Callum Kerrigan, of course, are alongside me. Matthew Malcolm, Sarah Stant, Hubert Pashtuka, Simon Kozlowski, Kamil Jurashek, and Daniel Montero have all signed out and will take no further part in the season. And there's even a final page for Peter Varga, Ryan Walker, Leon Griffiths, Callum Corcoran, always catches me out, Mikey Turner, of course, Car Exchange, Jordan Bubbins, and Raphael Huell will take no further part. So 49 sign-ups, 57 have signed in and out, and that is one long championship standings as we, of course, wait for cars to grid up. We've already touched on the RCI calendar, of course, this week. Just us here on RCI TV. Of course, Wednesdays and Fridays not netting enough signups. Very unfortunate there. However, signups have just opened. So if you are watching the broadcast, you're liking what you're seeing, and you think, you know what? I want to get involved with RCI at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Well, just the event was announced over the weekend for you. It's another multi-class race. This time, again, 6 hours. So part 2, should we say, to this one-off event that we hosted not so long ago. This time it's GT3, GT4 and TCX cars taking to the circuit for 6 hours of multi-class madness. Teams will be between 1 and 4 drivers, practice and qualifying in a separate server with no stint timer to also open up the strategy that little bit. Sign-ups are filling up fast, so if you do want to get your team registered just to reserve a slot, even if it's one driver, it still nets you the entry to the event. Of course, it's better to do that sooner rather than later, and that takes place on August 3rd here at RCI TV. And Jesse Lee, I think with the drone cam, has forgotten that cars are not, of course, on the grid here tonight. They are, of course, down at the Dottinger Her as we begin the drone fly cam, shall we say, as we go backwards through the circuit here, Callum. And of course, it's a fantastic circuit, the Nordschleife. It's really unpredictable at times. Of course, it nets to the train racing, should we say, that's kind of, similar to Alton Park, where there's not a lot of passing. You do really have to be quite brave. And of course, we see drivers standing up here within the hour when the checkered flag drops and results are announced. But again, the level of detail, Assetto Corsa Competizione, it's great to see all the behind the scenes bits. Of course, even when you watch the real life event and compare it to the in-game version, there's so many similarities that you notice. And 20 odd years ago, simulators being this accurate, I wouldn't have ever imagined it, Callum.
No, absolutely not. I've just got flashbacks of a young Callum sitting on his PS2 playing Gran Turismo 3, buying that MX-5, and doing the first 4 championships before realizing I don't have a memory card, and then just redoing it all again the next day. You're absolutely right that how far simulators have come, and with ACC bringing the Nordschleife earlier on this year, it's been such a welcomed addition. Going to that 6 hour, that part 1 that we had here at RCI, I reluctantly took the TCX for a solo 6 hour adventure, and though my brain was null and void afterwards, it was a race that I definitely won't be forgetting, and encourage anyone to sign up to part 2 if they can. And if they do want to join me in the TCX, because I will be representing the TCX gang once again, please do. Now, John, I know we're about to have an hour worth of GT racing here at the Nordschleife, but I'm more interested right now as to whether Jesse Lee can hit the apexes in this drone camo. He's missed a few here. He's missed a few here, but he's getting down. Lovely sort of late apex there, coming back down the dotting area as he finds the vehicles. But yeah, 1 hour here at the Nordschleife. I'm extremely excited, and like you said, we could be having a bit of a line astern, a train here, but the word you use there, bravery, is probably the word I would describe this racetrack and how to race here more than anything. You have to be brave, you have to make the passes, or you could be stuck for another 8-minute lap. There aren't that many opportunities to pass, but for people in the lead or the people at the front of these groups, breaking away, sort of how we see in F1 of trying to get out of that DRS train, is what you want to achieve before you get onto the Dotting Her. Because if you've got a car 4, 5, 6 tenths behind you, you could be losing the lead going into the next lap and into the GP section. So there's going to be a lot of pushing on this lap 1, I feel, and hopefully that results in some clean, fair racing. But we are in the Nordschleife, and we've said it a few times, this could get a little bit spicy.
Yeah, completely agree there, Callum, as Jesse Lee, of course, finally finds the cars as he comes, of course, under the famous Bilstein Bridge towards where the cars, of course, are gridding up. No full formation lap for us here tonight. Of course, it's a slightly shortened run from the Dottinger down through Tiergarten and Herrenreich before we begin the GP section. And, of course, an RCI front row lockout. Martin Lawrence, again, a driver well rehearsed in the Bentley platform. Spent plenty of time in that one over the weekend. And, again, Philip Brejster, a very good running indeed in the BMW M4 so far this season as well. Not forgetting, of course, Christoph Verstappen in the Aston Martin just behind Andy Boardman. We know how much of a monster the Mustang can be on the straight, so will we see a little bit of slipstreaming going on there? Of course, 2 low-slung cars, the Audi R8 of Jan Manzo, Benjamin Heilmann, as drivers now begin to get underway. Jesse Lee does his best Frogger cosplay, trying not to get hit by anybody at all. Mike Redford there at the back, and Martin Foster a little bit late getting away out of his kind of grid spot. Very slow run down, of course, under the Bilstein Bridge, up through Tiergarten. Of course, a much faster run will come in a lapse time. Tyres are going to have to be pressured up as much as possible. You see brake lights obviously on for everybody as they try and heat up the brakes as much as possible to take some surface temperature into the tire. Of course, breaking down into turn 1, the pinch point of the circuit. You're going to have to adjust your braking marker ever so slightly. Not too early though, because you may catch out someone behind you who is not expecting what is going on. Of course, last of the late breakers into turn 1 could be quite profitable, breaking out from the pack that is chasing behind. They roll very, very slowly indeed, back up to 70 kph. Martin Lawrence looks a little bit further ahead. Of course, has to readjust for his grid marker as we begin to go green here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Turn 1 awaits at the bottom of the hill. Normally 2, 3, sometimes even 4 wide as the green flag waves. We are underway. It looks like Philip Bregster and Martin Lawrence have both got an equal start. Christoph Verstappen has managed to jump Andy Boorman, Jan Manzo and Benjamin Harman in the background still in frame. Carlos Calatayud and Grim Lilith pinching together on the apex. 2x2 into the first corner. Looks relatively clean. Remember, check up for the tight left-hander as we avoid the Mercedes arena. Of course, coming down towards the Ford curve, everybody trying to find some pace. Martin Foster looks like he might have been shuffled out ever so slightly from the working order. I'm being told it's actually Byford, not Foster. My apologies. And the race leaders are already beginning their charge down to the Dunlop curve, the Goodyear curve, whichever tyre brand will sponsor the corner for this race. Hard on the brakes, of course. Everybody in a single file by this point. It looks relatively tidy. I don't want to say it too soon. Everybody seems to be pacing themselves, Callum, because they know that the Nordschleife is coming up.
Absolutely. Survive, survive, survive is what's going through the minds right now. Get through this lap 1, get the tyres up to temperature, and fight for lap 2. We've got a Mustang going off in the background. He collects someone. I don't know who he collected there, but it looks like he just ran wide on the Schumacher S's, and it looks like he took out Daniel Crinzen there. So Stephen Van Kampen losing it on the exit of the Schumacher S's, and sadly collects Daniel Crimson. What was a clean start sadly has ended the race prematurely for these two racers. Nothing Crimson could do. He came as far right as possible, and that is a shunt. I do wonder if his wrists are okay. If he had a direct drive wheel there, that could be a bit of a wrist breaker there. Both directly to pit lane. I think just saw Crimson there going off the jacks, so he's got a bit of a pit lane time to wait, and he's going to be back on circuit to hopefully join the back of this pack as we're back on board with the leaders. Philip Bregster is currently following Martin Lorenz, Christopher Streppen, Andy Boorman, Yao Manso, Benjamin Harman, Carlos Calatayud, Grin Lilith, Van Kampen and Tom Shipston are the top 10, all navigating this first fast sector of the Nordschleife. It looks like the top 3 are just breaking away a touch to Andy Boorman, who doesn't want that, as he wants to try and get on the back of Verstappen for the championship. And we've got Foster fighting here with Stevens, a bit of teammate on teammate action there on the RPMS car, and Mike Redford seizing the opportunity there to go up the inside and try to take a position. Relatively clean start, John, and we've got a race replay again. Is this Redford? No, Redford making a mistake there, and he spun. Oh, and he gets collected by Aubrey, unfortunate, but there's nowhere really for Aubrey to go. Damage for the number 95 and for Aubrey in the number 13. They're gonna try and circulate a full lap if they want to fix that, and maybe fix damage now, get the pit stop out the way and get back on fresh tyres. Relatively clean start, John. A few incidents there, but we are off and going here at the Green Hell RCI British GT round 4. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it's a bit of a messy start, of course. Second week in a row, Daniel Crimson's start has not gone ideal. Of course, cast your mind back just 1 week ago to Donington, of course, finding himself starting on wet tyres, went for the pit lane and unfortunately just could not make the pit lane. And again, Stephen Van Kampen coming across the front of him up at the Schumacher S, so not ideal. But everybody filtering out through, of course, the Foxhole up to the top end of the circuit they go through. Adenauer forced, again, a very slow section, very single file, quite hard to find space to try and find overlap, as of course most of the drivers getting through successfully. Of course, Redford and Harvey, to name 2, coming together on the Hatson back. And again, it's a whole lap before you get back to the pit lane. So if you do have a moment, you know, you ideally want to have it around the end of the circuit, kind of around Brunchen, Flansgarten, somewhere around there. Not, of course, at the start of the lap, especially on the GP section, because you can't even take the shortcut into the pit lane on ACC. I believe you have to go all the way around once before you find the gap in the barrier to get through into the lane. So that explains why Van Kampen and Crimson immediately towed back to the garage, of course, to get them out of trouble, to save them limping around an 8.5-minute lap at a crawling pace with maybe bent steering, damaged suspension, etc. That would not have been all too pretty.
Oh, we got someone off in the back.
That's Whittle running wide. That's going to allow Ted Edwards the overlap, and Ted Edwards already through. So that just proves how much time Richard Whittle lost. Have a look where Ted Edwards is. A good, 3 or 4 car lengths back. Way too quick into the corner. Slid out of the cambered section. And, of course, found the Armco on the outside. And if that was a tourist day, that would have been a very expensive mistake for Richard Whittle. Luckily, in the game, we don't charge anyone for barrier repairs. Otherwise, tonight could be a very costly one for some drivers.
Expensive indeed. We're replacing a lot of Armco if this was in real life right now. We've got Brezhta all on the back of Martin Lawrence coming into what will be their first pass of the carousel. No real opportunity to pass, and no real opportunity to pass here until the dotting her. So he's just going to try and keep within that 5, 6 tenths. Oh, Lawrence makes a mistake there. A little bit of nerves maybe being chased down by Brezhta, but I highly doubt that with Martin Lawrence and his winning ways as seen from his results in the World Tour. But he's going to hold on here, try to keep within half a second and get the slipstream into the dotting her, try to make that pass and then break away. Has the BMW got the legs on the Bentley? We will find out shortly as we jump on board with Carlos Clatian and back to the leaders. Brezhta all over Martin Lawrence. So these are teammates, more than likely talking into their own Discord channel. Probably a little bit of fighting talk there. Put the other driver off. But of course, these guys race with each other day in, day out. It's going to be nothing but clean racing for these guys. And yeah, this is looking good, John. If we get this fight all the way to the end, I'm excited for this one. I really, really am. I'm very, very excited to be back at the Nordschleife. It feels like it's been far, far too long here at RCI.
Yeah, it has been a little bit too long since we have had a Nordschleife event, and this is a great one already. Of course, Martin Lawrence through the Flansgarten section over the crests towards the Beloff S. Pretty much a flat-out section in the right car with the right amount of downforce and setup, as of course Philip Brezhta will be getting a little bit of a tow all the time off the back of Martin Lawrence. Down with the brakes, down a couple of gears, throw it right before standing on the brakes again for the left-hander. Be careful on the inside curbs. The outside curbs definitely usable, and then into the mini carousel, the Kleiner carousel, depending which you want to call it, before we run, of course, down the hill ever so slightly up the other side before setting themselves up for the Dottinger Her. And this is what we spoke about, of course, the slipstream battle. We've got an M4 behind, a Bentley punching a hole in the air ahead, and Brezhta will either hold fire and bide his time, or he will use the slipstream to his advantage. Closing up already, gets the overlap down the Dottinger Her. The BMW very strong in a straight line, especially with a slipstream from the Bentley. Under the Bilstein Bridge, of course, to the left-hand side, we will go as we descend down the hill towards Tiergarten. Martin Lawrence allows the pass to happen, tucks back in, tries to get a little bit more tow to see if he can make a move into Tiergarten, or of course the last corner of Hohenrhein. But drivers line of stern, of course, the RCI drivers very sensible in how they race each other. We might see a little bit of friendly fire as we saw with RPMS towards the end of the race, who knows. But of course the first lap ticked off 9.5 minutes nearly into the race, and we are only one lap down, and Martin Lawrence using the slipstream down the GP Stracker, seeing if he can make a move into turn one, but tucks back into line. Of course, Christopher Streppen looming in the background. It won't be the first time that he's taken a race victory from other drivers fighting, as we catch a race replay here. Mustang on Mustang action. This is Ted Edwards and Kevin Boss, and there's a bonk in the back there. I think this is the section just after the carousel. Kevin Boss sideways as he fights the car, trying to get it back under control. Even hits the headlight switch. I think that was into Herak, the left-right section as you head up the hill after the carousel. But Very well held from Kevin Boss, but absolutely getting swarmed up now. Ibiza Racer has passed Richard Whittle also through, and Aaron Jackson in the Repsol livery we spoke about earlier on also looking to take a position. So Kevin Boss going to be fighting some rear end damage on that car. He may be one of the first pitters that we see, but Andrew Harvey into the lane. Of course, he's just completed the lap after the incident with Mike Redford, elects to take an early stop, which is strange given the fact we have the mandatory pit stop. And I think this is the race replay here. Redford already loose in the Hatzenback, and the camera kind of, it's just before this camera, but just after the last one. And there's the aftermath, of course. Redford facing the wall. Harvey caught the rear end of Redford as he tried to squeeze past. But speaking of squeezing past, Martin Lawrence has made up a position on Philip Bregster somewhere as they're about to go too wide into the Sabina Schmitz curve. Bregster thinks better of it. Lawrence gets a little bit wide on the exit, but Christopher Streppen, we said he was looming in the background, Callum. He is closing up on this fighting duo very quickly.
He is right there. While we were reviewing other bits of action on the track, Martin Lawrence has got back ahead of Brescia, possibly at the Dunlop curb. They're both fighting, you see, as they come onto the Nordschleife. Rear end stepping out left, right, centre. Big save from Verstappen there. Unbelievable that he kept it on the circuit. We're seeing saves left, right and centre. If we ever had a competition for best save of the season, we've probably got top 5 in this race and in this first 1 and a bit laps alone. Unbelievable racing so far, but that's exactly what Verstappen wants. He wants those two fighting, as we've got a race replay here with Martin Foster in a very nice livery car, and he finds a wild RPMS McLaren there on the exit, and that's very unfortunate. Had nowhere to go, really. So it was Nicholas Galloway that were on board with the Ferrari, back on board with the leaders. Verstappen, this is exactly what he wants. He wants these two to be fighting every single corner, every sector, because every time they go side by side, one of them dips and noses into a corner, they're losing. They are losing time, and Verstappen is going to gain as we're riding on board. I believe this is just going into, or just after Schweidenkortz and into Armberg, and then coming down the straight into Vauxhall. So nothing really happening there on screen, but we're 1.5 laps in, or 1 and a bit laps in. We've had 2 changes for the lead, and we've still got a lead battle between 3 cars. 5.7 seconds back from Andy Borman. The Mustang just not having the legs on these 3 today. What a race, John. What a race.
Yeah, we've seen Andy Bourman, haven't we, with a commanding start to the season. The Mustang very happy at some of the British tracks, not looking so happy here at the Nordschleife as he drifts through Kallenhard and Metzgerfeld, going out into the kind of top half of the loop, should we say. But the number 69 Greased Weasel car looking very unhappy indeed at the moment. But Christopher Streppen closing up onto the back of Bregster. The Aston Martin certainly looking very good indeed. Down towards kind of Breitscheid we go, and into Ex-Müller, of course, where we saw Richard Whittle go off earlier on. Of course, the 747 looks very good behind Bregster, and Jesse Lee shouting all kinds of obscenities in my ear, really putting me off tonight. So hopefully he calms down a little bit. But Martin Lawrence out ahead, of course. Philip Bregster dropping back ever so slightly, and Christopher Streppen is going to get the slipstream as we head through Bergwerk up into Kesselchen, and Christopher Streppen's wide.
Bit of a barrier brush there.
A graze of the Armco indeed. I think it was light enough to get away with it though, Callum. Let's catch a race replay of the Belgian driver as he catches the dirty air, maybe gasses it up a little bit too early, clips the curb and runs the Aston over the grass into the Armco, but luckily gets away with it with minimal time loss. And Callum, this is exactly what you were talking about in qualifying, with this being the race of attrition.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to give the barrier a bit of a love tap. Just check that it's still there. Check that he's still scared of it. Thankfully got unscathed. Otherwise, we would be back to a two-horse race here. So we ride on board here. It says Kevin Boss with Action Jackson. Kevin with another save, but gets collected by Aaron Jackson. Kevin Boss there promoting the Rally Series and accidentally gets collected by our Rally Series cars. An unbelievable save that he almost caught onto there. Unfortunately, nowhere really for Jackson to go. Kevin making saves left, right and centre, but not really having the start hit that he wanted to here. And from racing here, time and time again, John, you get that little bit of you get that mistake. You start making these small errors. This track is all about confidence, and Kevin's going to be suffering from that right now. So what he needs to do, take those deep breaths, recompose himself. We know he's a quick, we know he's a clean driver, as we can see how good he is with car control, with the siding, and he's going side by side into the carousels. We jump straight on board with the leaders. Brejka is right up the back of Martin Lawrence, setting himself up for the Dottingher. There is so much going on up and down the track. I can't keep up to date. This is unbelievable. But Verstappen, again, he sees these two behind. He's probably like, go and go side by side. Let me get that double slipstream into the Dottingher. Because we have to say, if one of these break away, I think it's going to be game over. These two need to be line astern for the whole race if any of them want a chance. God, there's too much going on, John. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, far too much going on right now. Of course, Lawrence out front, Brejka behind, and Verstappen ever so slightly behind those guys as well. And I mean, if I was the RCI cars out front, I might even incorporate some bump drafting tactics to try and break away from Christoph Verstappen behind. But of course, all drivers kind of, single file at the moment. The pit window has opened at the top of your screen. Of course, you'll see a white box with a countdown that says pit window open. When that hits 0, pit window will close and no mandatory stops can be taken after that. So the requirements tonight are a fixed refueling time of 25 seconds. That's whether you add 1 litre, 20 litres, 50 litres. Either way, you're going to be held for 25 seconds, leaving tyres completely up to the drivers. So, of course, tyres will only cost you 5 additional seconds in the pit lane. Will fresh tyres on a long circuit like the Nordschleife really pay off? Of course, you can catch the guy, but can you pass them? Of course, this big long straight sets up passing moves very well. We see once again Philip Brejka in the BMW goes to the outside of the Bilstein Bridge, already cuts across the front as they come down the compression of Tiergarten up the other side into Hohenreich. And of course, the last of the late breakers, Martin Lawrence, not going to be close enough this time, although we saw him try to have another stab at it into turn 1 of the GP Strecker. And will we see the driver peel off to the pit lane? We do not. Christoph Verstappen in the background, he's going for one more lap as well. I imagine most drivers will cut this race in half, so we'll see a big flurry of cars coming in the next lap. And Lawrence looks ever so slightly, tries to put Brejka off turn 1, dab of the brakes a little bit early to back out of the move and fall back in line with these guys. Of course, plenty of action happening at the front. Of course, the race leaders, it's not a timing glitch in the top left hand side of your screen. They are both tied for the fastest lap of the race. And of course, on a circuit this long, Callum, the chances of 2 drivers in 2 different cars running the same best lap is quite astonishing, really. 809.560 for both drivers at the front. My mind is blown. 20.8 kilometers, and they're running the same lap time.
I mean, I'm looking at it on the timing screen. I'm looking at it on our tool, John, but I still don't believe it. How have they got exactly the same lap time? I mean, I actually hope that stays like that, because that would be quite the feat to sort of showcase at the end of the race. But that just shows how close these two are in pace, obviously with the different characteristics of this track being it so long, essentially the length of 5 different circuits. Each of these cars are going to have different characteristics that are going to benefit their respective driver through different sections of the track. Like we can see that through that sort of 3rd section, Brejka is able to get right on the back of Lawrence and really pressurise in there to make the move into the Dottingher. But as we saw in the previous lap, the Bentley seems to have the legs on the GP circuit, which gave him the opportunity to retake that place, which we thought was in Dunlop Curb. And how they navigate that, and more importantly, how they make their car behave through the sections they're not too good on, is really going to impact this race. We're on board with Galloway and Redford. I think there's going to be a bit of a pit lane bonk here. Galloway maybe playing it a bit conservative on the pit entry. You can see the damage, and Redford not really being prepared for that, has to skid off to the right and collects a bit of the barriers. Even more damage for Mike Redford, who's not going to be too chuffed with that. We've also got Kevin Boss in the pits repairing some damage. So those people that have been involved in a few incidents thinking, right, let's get in the pits, let's repair that damage, and let's get on again. It's so important for it's so important for you to have full control of the car, so any damage is going to really impact you. So they want that fresh car in order to be 100% confident on a track like this. Very important. One thing I have noticed, John, and something we didn't see, Benjamin Holman is up into P4, maybe an issue with the number 69. He's still showing his P6 on our screen currently, but this is a lovely little fight here for P4. Yao Manso, Benjamin Holman, currently 10 seconds behind the leaders, as we've got actually an onboard of how the move happened. It was at the end of the dotting. A bit of an incident there. Benjamin Holman hitting the rear of Andy Boardman for P4, and that's going to be a hefty amount of damage on the Mustang that he's got to contend with until he gets into the pits. That's going to be one for the stewards. Something we haven't spoken about actually is the stewards have got a little bit of work cut out for them today. And it's something obviously we massively appreciate our stewards giving up their time in order to live steward this race. We haven't had any penalties coming through just yet, as they're probably still getting through some lap 1 and maybe some early lap stuff, but it looks like they've got a bit lag, because they're a bit of a backlog, sorry, because there's been some incidents up and down the field, not only from what we have seen, but as we've said before, what we haven't seen as well. There's been a lot going on.
Yeah, there's probably been a lot that we have indeed missed tonight so far. It's just such a kind of action-packed field. Everybody already packed together, and of course lots of drivers electing to take their mandatory stop. Different pit stop times will of course lead those drivers to come out in different areas in their own kind of gap, in their own bit of fresh air, as Kevin Boss demonstrates so expertly here on my point. Nothing ahead of him, there's a car behind him, but Kevin Boss is in absolute no man's land at the moment, which should enable him to do that mental reset that you spoke about, Callum. Of course, hopefully find his confidence once again, as we see a move between Richard Whittle and Ibiza Racer. That was a very brave move indeed, and it had all kind of come off the back of a corner exit. Richard Whittle wiggling, hitting the wall, but Ibiza Racer equally getting loose, but going over to driver's right, and Whittle somehow the faster car off the corner. And somehow Richard Whittle has passed Ibiza Racer up into P16 overall. That was through the Callenhard section of the circuit. So very interesting to see that one. But Philip Brechler, meanwhile, at the front, has broken away ever so slightly. He is trying to build the gap to Martin Lawrence to try and break the toe that we spoke about earlier on in the broadcast down the Dottinger. Of course, Christoph Verstappen behind. No real answer to the pace of these guys at the front, but Brewster has slipped out of the carousel, and this is what I spoke about in qualifying. Jump out of the beige tarmac and you find yourself losing bucket loads of time. Let's have a look. Of course, Brewster at the front of the shot drops the car in. The car skates up and over the edge. Martin Lawrence with the much lower line. You see the speed advantage you get being on that lower part of the tarmac, and that is exactly how you do a move into the carousel. So mistake from Brewster, hands back the lead to Lawrence, and through the Wipperman section they shall go towards Brunchen. Both cars looking very settled on the curbs. Of course, some other cars not so good on the curbs around here, but the Bentley in the M4 certainly curb friendly in the game, and this will probably see another mirror move, Callum, of Brewster down the Dottinger, sailing past Lawrence. Lawrence might have a look into the GP section somewhere, and we go tit for tat once again.
Yep, I'm starting to sense a bit of deja vu here as we see Martin Lawrence being trailed by Philip Brewster with a mistake into the carousel. You said it, very, very important corner. You slip out of there and you bleed time. Obviously, I wouldn't know how it feels to actually drive the carousel properly, as I'm usually on the receiving end of falling out of that carousel as they come into this final section onto the Dottinger, and I do believe we will see exactly what you said, a mirror image move of Brewster getting past at the Dottinger. Martin Lawrence holding back, trying to point his nose in at T1 and fighting for lap 4, but these two, you cannot separate them at the minute. It's absolutely crazy to go through a track this length and still be able to fight the way this is seriously impressive driving. As we are now onto the Dottinger, it does feel like Brewster is a little bit further behind than what we are used to seeing. Maybe he's just cooked the tyres a bit, just couldn't hold it through this final section, and he's got a fair bit to make up. As we can see, he's got in the slipstream. Will he be able to make the move, peer out to the right and into the final section? As we've said, deja vu, John. We have another change for the lead in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. So deja vu indeed for Brewster and Lawrence. Once again, the lead changes on the Dottinger Her into Tiergarten they go. And of course, standing on the brakes for Hohenreich, no position will be had. But we know Lawrence is quite quick off the Nordschleife section, coming down the start-finish straight. Of course, Lawrence tucking in, trying to make the Bentley as small as it can be behind the M4 to maximise the slipstream down into turn one. Lawrence certainly looks a lot closer. He pulls out. He looks this time. He commits. He stands on the brakes. Will he get it drawn up in time? He does. There's a contact between rear and front of the cars, and they come out of turn one surviving the contact, and Christoph Verstappen has no answer for the battle going on at the moment. They're battling just enough to keep it interesting, but not so much that they're of course losing time to P3 just behind. 1.5 seconds was Verstappen at the line. I imagine that's a little bit less than it once was, as the fastest lap now goes to Christoph Verstappen after having the joint fastest lap between our race leaders. So that's an interesting one. Meanwhile, we've had lots of stewards reports coming through. Of course, plenty of action has happened that we've missed. A lot of minor contacts as Reiher darts out behind Matt Stevens. Almost a kind of mirror image of what we've been watching with Brewster and Lawrence. And of course, setting up the move very nicely. The McLaren looks much, much faster in the straight line compared to the Mercedes, so the Czech driver will move up a position. Meanwhile, Ted Edwards comes down the pit lane to make his mandatory stop, and follows with him, of course, Kenneth Dow. I did have a note about the pit stops today, actually, on pit entry and how difficult it is when we saw Galloway and Redford come together. The speed limit board has actually been knocked over, and I think Dow has put on the pit limiter that little bit too early when he saw the first painted white line, and then couldn't find the pit board, so played it insanely safe on the entry. And I'm wondering if this will catch out any of these leaders. And of course, we saw the lead switch earlier on, and Martin Lawrence, of course, out front as they come out through the Hatzenbach. The Bentley certainly more commanding on the GP circuit compared to the M4, which is much, much quicker down the Dottinger Her. And here was the move into turn one. We did manage to catch it, of course, a little bit of a bonk as they switched position, and Brewster couldn't really do the old up and under as he set himself up for, but drivers now heading towards Flugplatz. Christoph Verstappen still lurking in the background. But onto the stewards for tonight. They are having to work the circuit in a slightly different way to what they normally do, and Phil Roberts has sent me all the information we need to know. So it's been split up into 9 sectors. They roughly go between certain corners to make it easier. Phil has sent me a track map, which is very handy, but Sector 1 starts from the start-finish to the Dunlop Curve or GP hairpin. The Sector 2 then goes from the Dunlop Curve to the Nordschleife loop entry. Sector 3 will then go from the Hatzenbach essentially to the Quiddelbacher, which is about the 4-kilometer board in-game. It then goes from the Quiddelbacher Her to the Schwadenkreuz section for the 5-kilometer board. Schwadenkreuz up into Exmüller/Bergwerk, which is 10 kilometers, so a much bigger section to cover there. Sector 6 will go from Bergwerk to Kesselchen, which is up to about 12 kilometers. Kesselchen down to Galgenkopf at 19 kilometers, and then Galgenkopf finally up to the Tiergarten, which of course will kind of complete a full lap of the Nordschleife. So plenty of racing incident minor contacts going on between sector or lap 1 turn 1, lap 1 sector 1. We've got the 808, the 777, the 100. We've got 5 seconds for the 777 for avoidable contact. We then got another one for the same incident, so the 808, the 777 and the 100. It was a warning to the 100 for an unsafe rejoin. I'm not sure if this is what we're seeing on our screens at the moment. I believe it is. That is the 777, the kind of dark coloured McLaren around the outside. Of course, Ibiza Racer, there's a bonk and another bonk, and Matt Stevens ends up going around in the Ford curve before the Dunlop curve. At the bottom, oh, Reiher gets very loose indeed. Manages to hold onto it just about, and that is a terrifying place to really lose traction, especially at the high speeds that the cars are doing through there. Back to the stewards reports though, we have then lap 1 sector 2, so of course Dunlop curve till about the Hatson back, that runs 2. That was the 707 and the 35. It was a 20 seconds for the 35 for an unsafe rejoin leading to major damage. Of course that was the Daniel Crimson incident we saw earlier on, getting involved with the Ford Mustang. We then got some racing incidents, unavoidable contacts, minor contacts, etc. before we hit another one between the 420 and the 777. That's another 10 seconds to the 777. We then have the 777 and the 100 as we see a move for second place between Verstappen and Breitster as they climb up through the circuit and just about gets it done before we get to the fast left-hander at the end of the Klostertal section. Very close. Indeed, Verstappen's in the wall. He's lost it. He's hit the Armco, grinding down the Armco barrier, and Breitster goes back through. That's going to be big damage for Christoph Verstappen and not what we wanted to see. Very, very unfortunate indeed. Let's catch a race replay of how that all unfolded through, of course, Mut curve into the Armco, the trees obscuring the view. Christoph Verstappen's Aston bouncing down the bouncing down the Armco, and yeah, big time loss there for the Belgian driver. Breitster gets away unharmed, although be it with some time loss to Martin Lawrence, and just about surviving that incident. But that is the nature of the Green Hell and the Nordschleife. It's a very scary section, and when it goes wrong in a spectacular manner, which is what we just witnessed there. Back onto the stewards reports, lots of racing incidents. Warning for 73, we've got a warning for the 31, warning for the 95 as well. The major penalties being handed out to the 777, who nets themselves 25 seconds of additional time in the pit lane. So anytime penalties, of course, on the left-hand side of your screen on the timing tower, indicated by the red box after the split gap. So Reiher, of course, the only driver at the moment, and this could be another piece of contact that we picked up. This is up towards Flugplatz, side by side with Kenneth Dow, and there's contact. I mean, Reiher could have been a little bit further to the right. Of course, Dow was expecting Reiher to be more on the apex than in the middle of the circuit, and coming together at one of the fastest parts of the circuit. And Dow, of course, slapping down the wall there. And Reiher comes back on, and Stevens wants a piece of it, and Stevens turns Reiher. Stevens hard into the wall after that one as well. So the RPMS Mercedes not going to be all too happy on the front end. Callum, I'm hoping a lot of these teams have very large spare parts bins, because they're going to need it for a lot of these cars before the next round.
I'm absolutely speechless. What is going on? There is action everywhere. I'm still a little bit taken back for words for that incident with Verstappen. It's called Bravery Corner by many people for a reason. Just dropping down a gear, hooking it to the left. If you are going in there with too much speed, you are hitting the Armco, and that is exactly what Verstappen did. Very unfortunate for him. Unbelievable that Breitster managed to avoid that with minimal damage. I'm unsure whether he came together with Verstappen at any point in that, but they're all going to be doing their pit cycles at the end of this lap, and I fear there's going to be a couple of brushings of damage to fix between this top three, and then it's back to normal service, back to line astern, and they're going to be fighting for the remaining laps within this race. Obviously, we don't know how much damage the cars have. We don't know how much they're going to sort of gap each other through the different damage sort of damage times, but needless to say, the second half is going to be delivering just as much as this first half. We've got Richard Phillips, a wide running Bruno Teixeira there coming in, and we've got the leaders in the pit, line astern, in sync, the top three coming into pits. It's baffling that the Verstappen didn't lose more time there with the damage he had. We're back on board with Richard Phillips slipstreaming behind the GTR, and even in a slipstream on the Dottinger, the GTR has got the legs, and he's clearing the Lamborghini, John. The top speed of that GTR is obscene.
Yeah, I say the GTR, a bit of a top speed monster. It was kind of known for that characteristic in real life as well, and translates to the game. Let's have a look, see if the drivers get caught out by the missing pit board. Teixeira, I think he did. I don't think he could sight the pit board there. and maybe a little bit too fast into the pit lane. Time will tell as the majority of your top 10 all pull down the lane. And of course, it's a race off pit lane. Bracester, Lawrence, and Verstappen 3 wide as we come out of the pit lane. We're still 2 wide between Bracester and Lawrence as they go into turn 1. They stayed the correct side of the white line. No harm, no foul. Bracester on the inside. Verstappen trying to follow Bracester through. Just can't get the run off the corner. They're still side by side as we head into the next part of the GP circuit. The outside will become the inside for the next turn. So Lawrence just has to hang it around the long way. And Verstappen sees a gap, he goes through it, he follows Lawrence through as well, and there's a change for the podium. Verstappen up into P2, this time no Armco to find, and Bridgester down into P3. The pit stop timers, Lawrence actually the longest car down pit lane, a 1 minute 13.1, Bridgester with a 112.3, and Christoph Verstappen with a 109.6. Verstappen, the fastest car down the pit lane according to our timing tool. And remember the big lick he had down the Armco earlier on when, of course, he was fighting with Bridgester. That signals to me, Callum, no damage has been fixed on the Verstappen car, or he's exchanged the tyres in exchange for fixing the damage on that car.
Well, we can theorize as much as we want, but clearly I don't know what I'm talking about there. I thought we were going to have a much bigger gap between them, but instead we had a pit lane battle for the ages. And what you theorized, John, about Bruno Teixeira being caught out by that pit board has indeed come into fruition. A stop go 30 for him, and Kenneth Dow, who we spoke about earlier, that we thought had broke a little bit earlier, wasn't the case. He sped in the pit lane as well, but oh, and he's made a mistake. He managed to save it. He goes into the wall. Very unfortunate. I thought he saved that in that Ferrari, and Mike Redford's going to make a place here as he goes into the pits, probably to serve his stop go. And he won't be able to fix the damage that time around, so he'll have to go around again if he wants to fix the damage on that car. But we've got another stop go 30, another victim of this pit board in the 777. This is going to be very, very clutch here. We've got a couple people still yet to pit, and I wonder if there's a few people in teams, i.e. Richard Phillips, who's probably getting a bit of comms from his teammates saying, be careful, pit board is knocked out, we need to play it safe here. And we are starting to see some gaps opening up with these leaders. I'm unsure if that's through battling or a couple of mistakes, but maybe the damage taking its toll, maybe some people haven't taken tyres. Either way, it looks like Verstappen, with potentially old tyres or not fixing that damage, is on an absolute charge right now. Who would have thought that at the start of this race?
Yeah, Verstappen really coming into the second half of this race. Of course, just under 23 minutes to go on the clock. He's staring at the back of the Bentley of Martin Lawrence and Adenauer Force. Martin Lawrence makes a mistake indeed in the 171, and that's going to allow Verstappen with a little bit more of a closing gap as we come up into the next section of corners. I don't think it's going to be close enough to really capitalize on this one, but of course it certainly closes that gap up a little bit more through the middle sector. Of course, we've got the long run up through Kesselchen, so again, that could be another passing place for the Aston Martin, although trying it once, will he try it again? Who knows on the cards at the moment. But coming through, of course, the old famous miss hit miss, or miss if you decide to run wide and carry a little bit too much speed through there. It's a really easy corner to get wrong, and dropping down into Breitscheid, of course, with the run towards Ex-Müller at the bottom of the hill. It's where the Nordschleife has a nice join section towards the right hand side here. You can publicly join through the Armco on the right hand side, the slip road there. That's a public entry to the toll road, essentially, as this is, of course, for the majority of the years, hosting many different track days. Of course, the famous Nordschleife 24 hours, of course, numerous rounds of the VLN, the RCN, and lots of events in between. But Lawrence just able to stretch out enough of a gap, I think, towards Bergwerk to, of course, fend off Christoph Verstappen. He's not going to be near enough to catch the slipstream off the back of the Bentley. And looking in the mirror, that white dot you see just faintly in the back of the shot, of course, that's Philip Bracester. He has really dropped off in the second half of this race. Callum, of course, cast your mind back 50 minutes or so ago. Of course, they were running nearly identical lap times as we began the race, and Brescia just really doesn't have the pace currently in that M4.
Yeah, I do wonder what's going on with Brescia's pace. Obviously, I say what's going on. It's lightning fast compared to the pace I'm able to go around here, but he's dropped off the pace a little bit. That could be a mistake. Again, just disrupting his flow, disrupting his rhythm, and he's just trying to refine that after the pit stop. It could be that the others took tyres and he didn't. Obviously, we can theorise what we want, but we predicted something wildly different in the pit stop times. Or it could be that in order to maintain that pace, he just needed to stay in the slipstream of the cars. He does seem to have gained a couple of car lengths there since we've starting speaking on the topic, but it could just be that. And I think we can all attest to this, as obviously we play this game, we race regularly here on RCI. Chasing and being behind a car just gives you that extra 1-2% in order to keep that lap time and that momentum going. So if he's lost a little bit through a mistake there, doesn't really have that slipstream or that drive, or just being on the back of the car and just that drive to really glue itself to this. We've got Verstappen, I think, went a little bit wide there. Maybe wanted another little kiss with the Armco, you know, 1, 2, maybe 3 times a charm in terms of how much he wants to brush the Armco, as these three are pushing each other to the absolute limit. These three are top esports drivers and they are pushing themselves. I personally can't think of a single time where I've seen leaders, top esport drivers here at RCI making this many mistakes in a race. That's how much they are pushing each other right now, as we are on board with a leader who hasn't pit yet, so granted not the net leader, but currently enjoying a lovely lap here, leading the Nordschleife round 4 of the British GT Championship. Richard Phillips in the Randy Pleasemore supercar, I believe. And we've also gone on to board with another RPMS of Trevor Byford, who I think's made a mistake here. Found the barriers just coming around that foxhole section over the grass, and when you're on the grass here, it is game over. One tiny mistake, finds the wall one side, finds wall the other side, and I do believe that's a direct return to pit to either repair the damage, or call it a day.
Yeah, I believe last time out at Donington Park, I believe Byford had a similar incident going in towards the last corner. From memory, it was a hardware failure. I think Richard Phillips, or one of the teammates of the RPMS crew, did let us know in the championship chat. So possibly another hardware failure there. But meanwhile, of course, for the race lead, Christoph Verstappen is closing up on Martin Lawrence. He's going to try and do the old Philip Breitster underneath the Bilstein Bridge towards Tiergarten Hohenrhein. They go. Lawrence thinks better of it. You see the dab of the brakes. He gifted Verstappen Tiergarten and wanted nothing to do with that charge in Aston Martin. And that's the beauty of coming from so far back down the Dottinger Höhe. Of course, you can kind of do those moves where you get the real big slingshot from being so far back. You just draft and draft and draft, close the gap down the straight, and then you can fire a move towards Tiergarten. Lawrence, no answer though into turn 1 of the GP Strecker, and Philip Breitster just behind looks ever closer as Lawrence jinks out to try and do the old up and under. Nearly overcooks turn 1, runs into the wall on the cut through. Very, very close there for the number 171 Bentley. Richard Phillips, of course, in the RPMS car, Randy Pleasemore suit, as we're dubbing it here on Mondays at RCI TV. Of course, it does actually stand for Richard Phillips, Matt Stevens, SimSport, which, of course, both drivers currently in the race, the number 22 and the 100. But speculation was rife during a 24-hour race on what RPMS meant for, and we came up with the option of Randy Pleasemore suit. And there is a homage to that on Richard Phillips' Lamborghini quarter panel in the form of a bumper sticker. So brilliant to see the guys playing along with the jokes here. And 2 mistakes through the Schumacher S. Verstappen runs wide in one part. Lawrence thinks he has it, runs wide in the next part. It's tit for tat. Back to line astern they go once again. Let's catch a race replay. Verstappen runs wide on the right-hand side, and Lawrence overshoots the exit. Both cars dipping into the gravel. And that could have been very, very dangerous, Callum, as we saw on the opening lap between a certain Ford and a certain Nissan.
You're absolutely right, John. I had minor flashes of what could have been an absolute carnage, as we saw from lap 1, but Martin Lawrence keeping it on track, just following Verstappen's line, who ran a tad wide there and didn't make the correction. And we've got Brecht back in the mix behind the Bentley that he's seen time and time again in this race, probably getting a little bit bored of it, but we can only imagine, as they're friends and they're all in calls right now, they are loving every second of this, as am I, and as I can only presume you are, John. I'm going to call it now. With 15 minutes to finish, this is by far my favourite race that I have seen here. This is by far my favourite race that I've commentated on. This is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, this has to be kind of up in the best of races, should we say, here at RCI. It has been certainly action-packed towards the front and in the mid-pack as well. But, of course, as we get into the latter half of the race, gaps begin to open up. Drivers begin to fatigue differently. Focus levels drop. Of course, some drivers may be fresher than others. Some, of course, may have been at work all day. Some may have had a nice work-from-home job where they're a little bit more alert, as Verstappen, very brave on the curb usage. And, of course, line of stern behind Lawrence and Brecht are now beginning to form once again. Of course, pit window is due to shut in 5 seconds. Richard Phillips was the last of the cars down the lane, so everybody here has completed their mandatory stop. Rihar, of course, has to come back down for their stop-go 30. Teixeira still has a stop-go 30 to clear against his name as well, both for speeding in the pit lane, is all we can assume. And of course, 777 with 25 seconds. Brecht very sideways through Adenauer forced. That's not going to be good to the Pirellis. Let's ride on board. Watch the steering wheel on the left, tips it in, and the back end just goes. Manages to catch it very nicely, sets it up for a good exit. But that is, of course, going to add increased temperature into those rear tyres. And Pirelli's quite famously in ACC, hard to lose temperature, but very easy to gain temperature with big slides such as that. And this is a fight that's surprised me a little bit, Callum. Of course, we saw earlier on Benjamin Heilmann and Yao Manzo together on circuit, and I thought that Benjamin Heilmann would have pulled away considerably by now, but Yao Manzo really making that 222 RPMS Audi work, and certainly sticking with the back of Benjamin Heilmann. And like you said, it could just be that thing running in a pair. Of course, your focus levels are a little bit higher. You're almost mimicking what the car ahead of you is doing. So if they're driving a fast lap, so are you, because you're going to react to everything they're doing, such as we saw earlier, of course, with Verstappen and Brecht as they ran the exact same lap time. It's almost going to be a certain kind of thing going on at the moment between Heilmann and Manzo, of course, both in mid-engined cars. So again, the handling characteristics are going to be very similar between the two, and the only thing that really differs is, of course, the BOP, as we see Grim Lilith and Nicole Fox getting very dicey indeed down towards the Breitscheid area before they come up to the X-Muller, and Grim Lilith staying behind Nicole Fox for now, but the Audi R8 looking very fast indeed. And we saw, of course, Fox in qualifying with a big mistake in the Porsche, and Porsche typically not a very kind of friendly car at these bumpy circuits. It can be quite hard to either extract the pace or keep it on the straight and narrow. So will Grim manage to force the move, or we see a mistake from either driver prematurely ending this fight? But of course, just behind Tom Shipston, 3.5 seconds to the good as well. You can just about see him in the mirror of Grim Lilith. Could these two fight enough that, of course, it warrants bringing Shipston into the fight, which would, of course, make this a three-way fight for just inside the top 10, as we see Shipston there in the 296 RPMS SimSport Ferrari.
Yeah, John, we've been speaking and riding on board with the leaders so much that we not negated but haven't shown these other battles up and down the track currently, mainly with the Grim Lilith and Nicole Fox and the Yao Manzo and Heilmann, as Nicole Fox makes a mistake, recovers well, but Grim is going to be licking his lips there trying to capitalise on this mistake. But he can't can't yet, as we're about to go into the carousel section and into the start of Sector 3, where it is line astern. There's no real position unless there's a mistake to make that pass, but we've seen he is not shy, as we saw earlier on this lap, to go side by side in unconventional spaces. And going back to this Manzo and Heilmann fight, you're absolutely right. What a drive from Yao Manzo. Something we wouldn't have predicted, that he'd be up there with the esports guys, but here putting in a performance that he can certainly be proud of. Benjamin Heilmann, though, able to hold off this pressure, and he's been having this pressure all race long. It's not very fun seeing a driver like Yao Manso, who is absolutely rapid in that Audi, filling up your rear mirrors in Nordschleife. You want to be looking forward. The last thing you want to be doing is focusing on the car behind you, but I fear that's what Benjamin Harmon's had to do. There is a lot of pace in that Audi right now.
Yeah, Audi looking very strong indeed, and it makes you wonder why Audi, of course, pulled their factory support from the R8 program in the real-life series. Such a shame to see a car disappear into the background. And, of course, tucking in behind Benjamin Harmon through the Belfast. There's a wiggle from both drivers as they drop down the compression. Of course, it can be a notoriously tricky section to get right, and Harmon with a small mistake. That's going to allow Manzo to close up ever so much as they come towards the last few corners before, of course, the Dottinger Her. We've seen Philip Bregster passing a lot during this race already for the race lead, for second, for third. Coming down the straight, it looks like a much tighter run from Manzo through the Kleiner Carousel, but of course now up into the next corner. This is where you want to set up the car. You don't want to run too early, because like Manzo has had to do, he's had to back out of the throttle mid-corner, and that's going to hamper him ever so slightly down the straight. But of course, tucking in behind the McLaren, it's going to be a very good run from Manzo. He goes to driver's left, of course. Harmon thinking about the bigger picture here, but the Audi R8 sailing past on the main straight, and the McLaren seems to have the top end though. The Audi certainly getting to the top end faster, but Heilmann coming back, and of course in real life this would be a kind of side draft situation where, you know, it could go either way depending which way the wind's blowing. But side by side into Tiergarten, there's a touch. Heilmann's off on the grass. Can he keep it composed in the bottom of the shot? I think he does. It looks like minor damage maybe on the front of the RCI car, but race leader into the pit lane, Christoph Verstappen, thinks, you know what, one pit stop isn't enough, I want to make two. And I can only assume, Callum, that's going to be a fuel miscalculation on his part there. But let's catch a race replay side by side into Tiergarten. We saw it earlier. Harmon touches, jumps over the grass, keeps it out of the wall, Callum. No contact with the Armco. Fantastic driving from Benjamin Harmon in the 796. He is, I think, streaming over on Twitch, so if you want to see it from his point of view, that would be some very panicked, muffled screams, and detrimental to Christoph Verstappen. He hasn't remembered that the pit board isn't there. It's a stop-go 30 for the number 747. That's not how we wanted his race to end, as we see Grim Lilith eventually getting past Nicole Fox as well.
My heart is absolutely crushed for Christoph Verstappen right now. Held out in P3, waited for those leaders to have their scruff, picked up a hefty amount of damage on the way, got the lead with that damage, and has made a mistake which we believe could be fuel, and even worse off with the stop-go 30. I'm absolutely heartbroken for Verstappen right now. He's currently sitting in P10 with a stop-go 30 to serve. Where he'll end up, I'm unsure, but we know he's got the pace to fight back up the field. That does mean Martin Lawrence in the Bentley, back up front, Brezhka to follow, but something that we can now say with a big smile on our face after that move from Manso, he is currently sitting on the podium in that Randy Pleasemore supercar. What a drive.
Yeah, the Randy Pleasemore supercar on the podium, as Jesse Lee urges us to stop calling it that. It's, of course, the RPMS SimSport car, actually standing for Richard Phillips, Matt Stevens, both drivers, of course, in the race today. But great to see the guys playing along with it on their Lamborghini livery. Of course, a sticker if you're in the same lobby as them and you see the Lamborghini. Certainly check out the rear quarter panels of that car. Meanwhile, Tom Shipston, we spoke about it earlier, of course. If Lilith and Fox were fighting enough, that's going to bring Shipston into the realm, and it has done indeed. He has his sights firmly set on the back of Nicole Fox's 314 Porsche as they come, of course, up in towards the Flugplatz section. It's a very fast section here, of course. Drivers flat out, sometimes a little dab of the brakes just to get the weight transferred into the Flugplatz corner. Of course, very fast. Tom Shipston down a gear into fifth. Of course, will begin to accelerate away until they, of course, get to the next section that is, of course, Arenberg, before they begin the descent down into the foxhole and, of course, up the other side into Adenauer Force. Both drivers not close enough to make a move yet, but Nicole Fox certainly running a little bit wide through Arenberg. Doesn't quite nip the inside of the curb. Tom Shipston with a much tighter, kind of more consistent line, let's say, as they, of course, descend down. Be careful with the curbs on the left and right. Don't even bother trying to touch those. Stay well wide in the compression as well. Dab of the brakes, kiss the inside curb before setting the wheel straight for a heavy braking zone into Adenauer Force. Very slow section. Be very patient too early on the throttle, and you will find yourself skating wide over the curbs and certainly losing a lot of time as they, of course, begin the kind of run down to Metzgerfeld 1 and 2. Of course, both left-handers, both fast again. Nicole Fox over the curb, playing very risky strategy. Tom Shipston, much more akin to how I'd be driving right now, avoiding all the curbs. There's a bit of dust kicked up ahead. I can only assume that's either Grimm or I think Andy Boorman. Maybe, yeah, he's just in the front of the shot coming through the next section of corners. Of course, as they begin the old hit and miss, kind of akin to the Apex, as you should take the 3 of them, miss the first one, hit the second one before accelerating out and avoiding the third one, and then the descent, of course, down into Exmüller. Again, very easy to get this wrong. You know, too much brake temperature, you get some real big brake fading heading into the descent as you begin the climb down towards, of course, the Exmüller section, or up the other side, formerly known as Hotel, I believe. A lot of people tend to reference this uphill right-hander before coming into the louder left kink. Again, another flat-out corner. Set yourselves up quite well. You may even be able to get a move into Bergwerk, but I don't think it's going to be on. And I think the Porsche top speed through, of course, the Kesselchen section may be hindering you on this one. Of course, Tom Shipston tucking into the slipstream of Nicole Fox. Will he be able to make it 2x2, Callum? We've seen how it goes when it does go too wide into Muck Curve, and it's not very pleasant, as we saw earlier with Bridgester and Verstappen.
Yeah, it's a very high risk, high reward move there. As you can see, Shipston gaining and gaining on the Porsche. I don't think he's got the legs to quite get it, especially running over the curb there. Very risky. He thinks better of it. But as you said earlier, John, with the Grimm and Nicole fight that proceeded in the last lap, this is brought Shipston right into it, and Nicole Fox again with an incredible save. This race, how anyone is going to have wrists after this is unbelievable. What a save from Nicole Fox. That corner is practically flat out, and she has saved that, but misses it on the carousel, meaning Tom Shipston just slips through on the under there. Very unfortunate, but as we've spoken about a few times, you make that mistake, you disrupt your rhythm, you've got to get back in the game for the next corner, because they just come thick and fast. And I think that would have been just a little bit flustered from that slide. That incredible save made the minor mistake and lost the position down into P8 for Nicole Fox. But still an incredible drive for her. But this is turning, John, currently to a bit of a battle for P5. We've got Grimm catching Andy. We've got these two battling, but once Grimm starts fighting with Andy, these two will be right on the back of them, and all of a sudden we've got a bit of a fight for P5 brewing, bearing in mind that Andy got involved, also Andy Boardman got involved in that accident, and you can see on sort of the front there, still holding a little bit of damage, and he must be feeling that right now, whether that's from the previous incident or one that we haven't seen yet. Grimm Lilith is catching at a rate of knots, and clearly that must be some significant aero damage, because through these corners right now, that Audi is looking pacey compared to the Mustang.
Yeah, very pacey indeed. I just want to draw your attention, there has been a change of race lead. We haven't caught it on the timing tower just yet, but Martin Lawrence is down into P2. There was a mistake through Galbenkopf for Lawrence. It left a long-standing yellow flag, so I'm not too sure what happened. It looked a bit strange on the track map where he just was. It was about 2 or 3 minutes ago. It was on this lap, just at the start of the Döttinger Her. So I'm not sure if we'll catch it with a long race replay or not. But of course, Lawrence just losing it all on his own. It looks like actually it's before Galbenkopf. It's actually coming through Schwabenschwanz just before the Kleiner Carousel on that one. And somehow Lawrence losing it, getting it back underway. And Lawrence, we're being told, is into the pit lane. A big slide through Galbenkopf. Of course, the Pirelli's super heated up, I can only assume. I'm not sure if Lawrence has misjudged the fuel as well, but into the pit lane he will come. Fingers crossed he's got it stopped under the speed limit board. Of course, it's been missing a little bit of a wiggle there on the straight. Maybe just trying to fill the car out, see if there's any handling kind of abnormalities that he's not quite used to. But Bridgestone has gone through into the race lead. Benjamin Heilmann also into the pit lane, I'm seeing on my timing tower. I think a lot of these drivers, Callum, I think they've all misjudged the race length by 1 lap. And of course, 1 lap here at the Nordschleife is a considerable amount of fuel to underfuel yourself by.
Just when you thought this race couldn't give us more, we have been given a whole host of more. Some incredibly fast drivers have missed out on the fuel, and we've just got on board with Grim Lilith that has got past Andy Boardman, and out of all this carnage, John finds himself in P3. Thankfully, clearly he's put enough fuel in the car to do this final lap, capitalizing on some damage there from Andy Boardman. And overall, we currently got a BMW P1 in Philip Bridgestone. I know it doesn't say it on our timing table. And then an Audi 2 and 3. Who would have seen that at the start of the day?
Yeah, of course, we're just waiting for the timing gates to update as they've begun to obviously shuffle themselves about. We haven't had one since the start-finish line, and of course, lots of drivers in the pit lane. That has really shuffled things about. So logically, it's going to be Bridgestone at the front. Of course, this man here, Jan Manzo, in second, and then we've got Grim Lilith in third. So like you say, Callum, of course, 2 Audis on the podium provisionally. Of course, Andy Boardman's still lurking in the background at the moment. So again, could be a force to be reckoned with. Of course, just there we see the Mustang coming through. There is a considerable gap and lots of front-end damage to Andy Boardman's car. So again, that could be detrimental coming down the Dottinger. Christopher Streppen, of course, with his stop go 30. He's going to have that out to the end. Benjamin Heilmann also nets himself a stop go 30 as well. That will be added on to the race time at the end. So again, lots of things will be shuffled about, and this is the unpredictable nature that we, of course, spoke about here, Callum. Of course, we said in our opening intros, it's going to be, you know, a race of attrition. Who can keep it the safest, the longest? Christopher Streppen finds himself in a bit of a jam with Tom Shipston and Andy Boardman just ahead as well. And again, it's going to be very pointless trying to risk something at this point, because not only do you then risk the live stewards looking into you, you do, of course, then risk additional penalties. And on top of that stop go 30, that's going to shuffle you down even further, probably outside the top 10 even.
Yeah, probably outside the top 10 indeed. We've obviously got Nicole Fox 3 seconds behind, then Badowski 3 seconds behind Fox, and then a gap of 20 seconds to Richard Phillips, then Emo Plata, then Ted Edwards, Martin Foster, Ibiza Racer. He's probably going to come out after that stop go 30. So we've got to move Tom Shipston going around the outside, capitalizing on Boardman's damage. Will he stick it round? This is such a hard corner. You lose grip there, and it could all go wrong. Holding the inside here, no tap, managing to keep it clean. Verstappen trying to pick up the scraps here, maybe trying to make a move into Foxhole, which would be extremely ballsy here, but Shipson makes the move into net P4. Verstappen going for it into Foxhole. Unbelievable opportunistic move. And now we're going straight on board with the race replay here for the move for Verstappen into Foxhole. That is very risky. You need to have full trust for his championship rival there, Andy Boardman, as he runs wide there. Unbelievable racing and incredibly clean from all 3 drivers. Shipson currently finds himself in a net P4 with Verstappen with a stop go 30 behind. If I was him, obviously we don't want to risk it here. I've spoken about this time and time again. This race is about survival. If I'm in his position, I'm laying that Aston, waving him by, giving him a salute, and holding my P4 because I know he'll drop back at the end of the race.
Yeah, like we said, Callum, there's no point, of course, fighting if you were Shipston at the moment. You may as well just let Christopher Streppen through, even benefit from maybe a slipstream, of course, through the kind of longest straight areas up through Kesselchen and, of course, down the Dottinger for the last time. But yeah, Verstappen looking very racy, and to pass into the foxhole compression, that is certainly a very big balls move here at the Nordschleife. It took 2 drivers to make it work. Of course, Andy Boardman, kudos to him for realizing what was going on and leaving enough space. I think I've just seen Tom Shipston's indicator on. He indicates over to the right-hand side before we get to Bergwerk. Verstappen goes through, and I think that was a very smart move from Tom Shipston in the number 60 Ferrari. He knows Verstappen's, of course, got the stop-go 30. That's information that's available to everybody in the game at the moment, and a flash of the hazards from the Belgian driver to say thank you for that one. He's going to see how much of a lead he can pull out over Shipston. I don't think he's going to negate the penalty, but he's going to give it a damn good shot either way, as we see Martin Foster, the racer, getting very close into Arenberg and out once again. More contact between Ibiza Racer and Foster. Not the cleanest of moves. Nonetheless, Ibiza Racer up into P14. Foster down into P15. I just want to turn our attention over to the live stewards just to see if we've got any news from them on any further incidents. And the only one since lap 4 that we've had was lap 6 involving the 222 and the 796. No further action. The 796 turns in too early on the 222 and makes contact. No further.
I think we've just had some technical difficulties there from John, but I think he was just saying no further action on that final stewards report. As we jump straight on board with Kevin Boss, we saw a lot of action, a lot of incredible sideways action from Mr. Boss there. It looks like he's got a much healthier Mustang here in the second portion of this race as he fights with Mike Redford. These two race often here at RCI, so they know each other's strengths, they know each other's weaknesses, and this is going to be a battle that we're going to be seeing for the end of the race. John, I believe we have you back. Are you here?
I am indeed. Yeah,
welcome
mysterious tech problems always plague us here at RCI. We have had none tonight, so of course I had to get one in before we did finish out the broadcast. But Christopher Streppen has found his way onto the back of Grim Lilith. Very astonishingly indeed. Absolutely dumped Tom Shipston. And of course, Grim, he's going to have sweaty hands right now, of course, wrestling the Audi around the Nordschleife for the hour. Jesse Lee's screaming in her ears for Grim to let him go, but I don't think he wants to yield at all through the Beloff S's. If he yields anywhere, it's going to be on the Dottinger Her, of course, as the slipstream kicks in. Only a few more corners to go before we get to that one. Of course, we've got the Schwalbenschwanz where we are now, but meanwhile, Philip Bregster all the way out front. He's crossing the finish line currently, and he will come through to take victory here in the flyaway round at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And it wasn't an easy one, with Martin Lawrence and Christopher Streppen to name 2 drivers to boot. And Yao Manzo currently sat in no man's land. Have a look on the track map on the right hand side. Philip Bregster, bear in mind, has already crossed the line. There's nobody close behind him other than Christopher Streppen, who I believe has just got past Grim Lilith. But of course, a stop go 30 for 747 will in theory net him back a few places anyway. But what a recovery drive. Had he not had the stop go 30, that would have been a podium for Christoph Verstappen. But Yao Manzo, an excellent drive in the 222. The RPMS SimSport driver comes across the line to take the next step of the podium here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and in theory next along the line, coming through Tiergarten and Hohenreich for the final time, is of course Christoph Verstappen. A little slide out to the Armco. He will come across the line, although a stop go 30 will shuffle him back down the order, and we'll have to see how many places he does indeed lose when the race has rounded out. Grim Lilith in a provisional 4th place. Tom Shipston just behind will come through in 5th. And then a big gap back to Andy Boardman's Mustang. Actually, not a big gap as I thought. He's just crossed the line with Nicole Fox in tow. Of course, a big mistake from Fox. Lost a few positions. Marco Badowski, a much better round this time out. P8 in the Team Monkey Racing Lamborghini. And Lawrence pirouetting across the line for P9. That's not going to be an ideal scenario for the number 171, especially after the commanding lead he had. And Richard Phillips somehow rounds out the top 10 in the RPMS 22 Lamborghini, followed closely by MO Plate just behind in the number 71. Benjamin Harmon, of course, stop go 30 converted to a 60 seconds. He's going to be kicking himself for that one as well. Ted Edwards comes across the line in P13 in the number 8 Mustang, and Ibiza Racer will be the next car along the way. They're already just beginning the Dottinger Her run. And Callum, what a fantastic race we've had here today. We knew it was going to be, very chaotic in a sense, but I don't think nobody could have put their money on that many lead changes, and then the absolute curveball at the end of Lawrence losing the car. Then we had underfueling from numerous drivers. We've had late penalties in the game as well, which has really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons essentially in this scenario. And we're going to see a few surprise people on the podium when this one does round out.
You're absolutely right, John. I've been smiling ear to ear from lap 1 onwards. This has been an absolute incredible race to watch, an incredible race to cast, and I can only imagine how much fun these drivers have had as we see Ibiza Racer coming through in P14. Incredible drive from him, followed by Martin Foster, and then down the road we have Bruno Teixeira, Mike Redford, Kevin Boss, all coming down with Dottinger. It's been genuinely an absolute pleasure for me to watch and cast this one. An incredible race. Obviously, we've had the drama, we've had that fight for lead. 3 different people in the lead of the race, well 4, including Richard Phillips, capitalising on a late pit stop. And we've got Mike Redford and Kevin Boss, who've been battling for this last lap, coming over the line. Yeah, it really had it all. In terms of a flyaway round, we decided to come here at Nordschleife, and I don't think there's a single regret. What an incredible race.
Yeah, absolutely incredible race indeed. Normally, of course, the real-life British GT flyaway round is, of course, the Spa-Francorchamps, but of course today we did choose the Nürburgring Nordschleife on the cards, and like you say, probably glad we did, as we see a final mistake there from Philipp Reicher coming across the Hohenreich section just a little bit too fast. Back end of the McLaren goes, gets it back underway, but Kenneth Dow lurking in the background could have potentially picked up another place, and the Ferrari driver will certainly run it to the line to really see what they can do, and they will finish just behind Reicher in the 777. We've still got Richard Withel coming through Tiergarten up through Hohenreich for the last time, and I think he will be the final car to finish. Trevor Byford has retired to the pit lane, so Richard Withel for Withel's Wizards will be your final car across the line, and this is where all the positions shuffle, and we're going to have to take a look at where everybody has finished up, of course, once Jesse Lee pulls up the results through the timetables. And here we go. Of course, it was Philip Bregster to take your race win, followed by Yal Manzo and Grim Lilith. It's a double Audi podium. Nobody expected to see the 4 rings up there once, let alone twice. Tom Shipston, of course, promoted up into P4. Andy Boardman into P5. Nicole Fox gains P6. Badowski goes up 1 to P7. Lawrence converts his 9th to 8th. Richard Phillips, of course, just inside the top 10 this time. And Emo Plate rounds out the top 10. Ted Edwards in P11 before we see Christopher Strepin's penalty shuffling him all the way down from P3 to P12. Benjamin Heilman just behind him again with a penalty. Ibiza Racer, Matt Stevens, Foster, Teixeira, Redford, Boss, Gallower, Reicher, Dow and Withel were your cars to take the checkered flag. And we said it earlier on, of course, this would be a race of attrition. Byford, Calatayud, Van der Linde, Crimson, Jackson, Harvey, Van Kampen and Fukushio all didn't take the checkered flag, so points lost there in the championship standings. Good points gained though for Manzo, Lilith and Shipston, and of course that's a solid result for Boardman, with his rivals finishing just underneath him as well. As we do have a post-race interview. Yao Manzo, welcome into the box. P2 at the Nürburgring. I don't think nobody saw that one coming. What a race from you.
Hey guys, thank you. That was really intense. Just the race with Heilman. Oh, he got the pressure on him, and I just got the overtake. Like, I don't know if I touched him, I don't think so. That was close. My heart's still pounding after that.
Side by side through Tiergarten was really something to watch on the broadcast. Heilman somehow kept it out of the barriers. We don't know how, but he didn't touch either Armco, right side or left side. So very, very scary moment indeed. Probably go and watch back Stewie's stream. I'd be really interested to see that from his point of view. But yeah, certainly fantastic racing out there today. Obviously, a good score of championship points. Were you quite confident coming into the Nürburgring, or was it around you were kind of dreading a little bit as we see, of course, the race replay, you just at the front of the field there?
I was a little bit afraid because the Audi is a bit of a death trap around here. So, and the PC just doesn't work at all. So, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna follow him and just try to make him do a mistake instead of me just pushing. And it just kind of worked out in the end, I guess. I just didn't go for a lot of risks, just when I needed it. And that got me P2, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say it was a very kind of short race of attrition, shall we say. Of course, the 1 hour slot, lots still happen, lots of cars falling around you across the 1 hour race. Sorry, Callum, any questions for Yao on his race tonight?
Not much that you haven't touched on there, John. I just wanted to essentially just extend my congratulations. An incredible race and an incredible drive in that Audi. Yeah, for you to get the move on Harman. I know there was a bit of a tap, but it was genuinely absolutely amazing to watch. Incredible move, and yeah, go Randy, please more soup, right?
Exactly. Thank you, man. Shout out to Grim Lilith. He's the other Audi in P3.
So Grim has just joined us in the box as well. And of course, he does send his regards to you. Grim, welcome on in. Of course, not one set of Audi rings on the podium, but two, of course. How did your race go in comparison to Manzo's?
And it was tough. The car had no stability whatsoever, but it was just acceleration at every corner. It was crazy.
Say Manzo complaining of the exact same things when we asked him as well. Of course, towards the end of the race, Christopher Streppen caught you at an alarming rate. Was it just a case of knowing the penalty was coming and giving him the space?
Yeah, no, I could see he got the SG30, so I just wanted to get out of the way of, I know the pace of Verstappen, so I'm not trying to hold him up at all.
Very sensible indeed with how quick he caught everybody, I think, at the end there. Callum, any words for Grim there?
Not much in this interview for which we're dubbing this this interview for you, Grim. Just an amazing result. There's clearly some magic in those Audis today, and proper chuff for yourself and Manso to get on the podium. Well deserved, incredible race from you both.
Audi gang, let's go. Shout out to our PMS.
Any shout outs from you, Grim?
Yeah, just shout out to Manzo on the P2 and the Audi. It's not an easy feat, and thank you to my wife in race control. Supports me through every race.
Oh, that's cute.
Say a bit of a romance, obviously, here at RCI, but yeah, great fun all around there. Well done again, guys, for keeping that Audi under control for the hour, because I know that wasn't an easy feat. But yeah, congratulations to you both, and I look forward to seeing you both at the next round, hopefully.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, we'll be there. Thank you.
That was Yao, Manzo, and Grim Lilith there, of course, taking second and third on that one. Of course, it is unfortunately that time when we do say our goodbyes here tonight, but not with a quick message from our partners. Of course, they've been revolving around in the bottom left-hand side of your screen on continuous loop throughout the broadcast. So all of their links are down below. If you do want to check them out, then please do so. Of course, AK Esports, a top provider of premium esports services and equipment. Of course, offering everything you need to elevate your competitive gaming experience, from high-performance hardware to expert coaching and, of course, event management. And they also provide our fantastic service solutions here at RCI, ensuring smooth and reliable racing for everyone. Go Setups, of course, provides expertly crafted car setups tailored to help you get the most out of your racing experience in titles such as Assetto Corsa and also, of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione. Featuring a plethora of esports stars on their team, you can be sure the setup you choose has extensive hours behind it. And of course, 2 new partners for us here this year. Moser Racing, who we are thrilled to partner with, a leader in high quality sim racing gear, from of course precision engineered steering wheels to durable pedals and advanced wheel bases. Moser Racing has everything to boost your racing experience. Be sure to of course support our community by using our affiliate link down below if you are looking to get your hands on these fantastic products. And of course, another new partner for this year, Motorsport UK Esports, where we have recently become a recommended community within the realm of their governing body. Motorsport UK Esports is the digital racing division of Motorsport UK and the governing body for motorsport in general in the UK, organising and sanctioning official sim racing championships, promoting high standards and of course governance also in esports. By engaging with the digital racing community and offering development pathways, Motorsport UK Esports helps sim racers progress in their careers, potentially leading to real-world racing opportunities as well. And they also collaborate with industry stakeholders to host events and promote the growth of sim racing in general, such as the UK qualifiers for the FIA Motorsport Games, which was over just a few weeks ago. Of course, that event happens in October, so keep your eyes peeled across all socials for that one. But of course, from myself, John Dalton, from of course Callum Kerrigan alongside me, Jesse Lee bringing you all the pictures from behind the cameras, and of course not forgetting our live stewards. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we hope to catch you next week once again on RCI TV. Take care.